This is our presentation identifying the solutions to the concerns you expressed regarding the team dynamic. As a reminder, our team members are Ken Hendrickson, Bree Valentine, Jordan Anderson, and myself, Belinda Singleton. We'll guide you through our findings and provide you with some steps to direct you to where you need to go to improve your team's cohesion. You move to the next slide. We have found the following things to be your major issues. Though you have a personal relationship with your team lacks trust, which further leads to miscommunication, side conversations, unhealthy or no conflict at all. A lack of accountability, which overall hinders your team's performance. With the solutions that we suggest, we can work together to create conditions that will allow your team to have vulnerability-based trust, healthy conflict, and hold each other accountable to become more effective, and individuals will be inspired to improve for the good of the team. Next slide. Trust is important to team dynamic. To improve this, you can implement vulnerability-based trust tools. A few things you can do is a personality profile. There are many out there, and we will help you select one that best fits your team. A personal history exercise, which consists of a variety of questions, a lot of relaxed questionnaires to allow everybody to just open up about themselves. Overall, team building is about doing things outside of work and having activities away from the usual work location. This is important and will help create opportunities for relationships to develop that don't evolve just around work. Next slide, please. Remember, trust building is an ongoing process. It needs to be practiced on a consistent basis. Trust is important because it helps with many things. One is being willing to ask for help. This will allow your team to work together and not have someone frustrated and stuck. And hopefully they will find a solution faster. Giving someone the benefit of doubt is a huge deal. It can prevent unnecessary or misguided anger or frustration that will slow progress. Creating a sense of belonging. I don't know about you, but I always enjoyed when I was younger wearing my team uniforms, and I enjoy wearing my branded work attire. Being part of a team that has trust can give that sense of belonging, pride, and accomplishment. Trust will also increase overall communication, build commitment, and connection. These are major things that affect your team, and trust is one of the first things, if not the first thing, that needs to be established and will make everything else easier. Next slide. This is how we can help. Again, the leader needs to go first and demonstrate vulnerability so others feel safe to do the same. Then we will help guide you through choosing a personality test and discuss how to implement that with your team. Use this to encourage interactions amongst your team and demonstrate how they can work together, and they can discuss their findings and find similarities and differences and see how, and just overall encourage casual conversation. With the current energy on the team, we suggest creating more of a fun line of questioning, asking about favorite things, some different history questions, maybe about where they were born, work backgrounds, and other things that will help just open discussion. Later on, we'll delve a bit deeper into some more sensitive topics that require a baseline of trust. In the future, we will also work, again, develop future trust exercises, and so you continue working on this ongoing process. Next, Ken will talk to you about team norms.
Okay, so what we want to talk about now is just this topic of norms. And norms would be rules that you would create to follow either in meetings or other parts of your company when you're dealing with people on your team. And so some of our suggestions surrounding this topic of norms would be to create the following norms or in your teams. So the first norm would be the norm of conflict. And what that means is you would create a norm or a rule when you guys meet together as a team that you will have conflict and that you need to have conflict in those settings. And so as you're able to have that conflict, you'll be able to open up conversations and have everybody share. The next idea is just setting up a norm of being respectful. This is pretty self-explanatory, but basically it's just as you're in those meetings and there is conflict, that we are respectful and we talk to people in a respectful manner, and we focus on the issues that we're talking about and not on people's personalities. And then the last norm that we suggest creating for your meetings would be a norm of consensus. And so what that means is basically that there's a rule in your meeting that you don't, as a team, you don't need to come to a consensus to be able to move forward and make a decision on a certain issue that you guys might be discussing. So everybody can share their feelings and then maybe not have consensus and then still be able to move forward and have everybody buy in on the team. So those are the 3 norms that we're suggesting that you put in place. Along with that, we're suggesting that you assign a bell ringer for each meeting. This would just be somebody that calls out when a norm or when a rule is broken. So it kind of keeps everybody on track. And then we'd also want to assign somebody in that meeting. It could be the same person as the bell ringer, but somebody to mine for conflict. And that would be looking for people that maybe have something to say or are being quiet. That person would be able to call on them to share their feelings and their thoughts. And then last of all, when we create all these norms, we want to make sure we put those at the top of each agenda and we review those regularly, so they're on the top of our mind. Next slide. So the why of this and the reason why we want to create these norms, the biggest reason is because creating norms will help create a condition for healthy conflict. So as we put those rules in place, all members of the team will be able to show up and they'll be able to be held accountable, and it will create this condition of being able to have healthy conflict and be able to solve problems and focus on the problems in the meeting. It will also go a long way to helping meetings be very productive and not boring. And so productive meaning everybody's able to have input and focus on the solutions and the problems. Next slide. And so what we want to do to help you put these in place is first we just want to meet with you one-on-one, and we want to talk a little bit about norms and help you understand what norms are, why they're important, answer any questions that you have, and help you plan a meeting where we just call it a kickoff meeting where you can introduce your team to the topic of norms, and then we would help your team create these norms that we're suggesting. Part of this kickoff meeting would be you would be in charge of that, and then we would be able to just come in and attend and help support you as the team is creating these norms. And then after we go through that initial kickoff meeting, what we want to do is we would want to attend at least one more meeting after that, where we would come in and be able to help everyone model what that looks like. So practice maybe modeling what conflict mining looks like, or ringing the bell when norms are broken. And so those are some of the ways that we will be able to help you put these norms in place to create those conditions for better, healthy conflict in your teams. Okay, and I'll pass it on to Bree.
Thanks, Ken. Joe, this one might be a little bit more difficult with you individually, just because I know that it is hard for you to seek feedback. So what we suggest is that you're open and honest with yourself and able to reflect on feedback that your team gives you, as well as provide feedback towards your team and classify them into stars so you know how you can move them over, up, or off. The reason feedback is really important is because it gives us, as leaders, opportunities to find out how we can serve our team and figure out their needs so we can move them up, over, or off, whether moving them up in the company, over to another department, or moving them off so that way they can develop their own growth. The second part of that feedback is really important is because it makes your team feel heard, and it leads to greater commitment because they know that their voice was heard and they know that they have played a part in this team. This will especially help with Abigail, just because she will no longer have to be your eyes and ears. She'll be able to share her own personal feelings, and everybody in their team can come to you with that kind of feedback. The last reason why feedback is so important is because a leader should never stop growing. And so your team should never stop growing either. Personal and team development will happen through feedback. And by doing this, you're able to improve communication because everybody will be able to have a voice, build connection because now we're able to understand each other a little bit better, as well as improve commitment towards your team because now you're engaging with your team and seeking growth for them, which is something that they're able to engage with. And then competence, because now they're learning and growing within the feedback. How you're going to do this is that it starts with you. You have to be willing to seek feedback and receive that feedback and then implement change. Next, we would then categorize your team as stars, whether that's a rock star, a rising star, a falling star, a deceiving star, or a steady star. And then we would use that information to then set up one-on-ones with them, to set goals with each individual team member to figure out where they best fit our team and our team needs. How we're going to help you with that is we're going to mentor you through receiving feedback and talk to you and help you reflect on that feedback and what that means to you and how to implement that into your leadership style, as well as we're going to have one-on-ones with your individual team members and help you develop a strategy to provide feedback that moves your individuals within the company to grow and expand. And then we're going to pass it over to Jordan.
Thanks, Bree. So Joe, the next thing we want to talk to you about for a minute is how you guys can utilize rewards to help your team. So having said that, we have 3 main suggestions for you on how you guys can best use your rewards to have an effective team. So the first one is to look for ways to tie monetary rewards to desired behavior. And then along with that, we want you to not just use monetary rewards, but look for other creative ways to reward your team that's not just a one-time bonus, but throughout the year, you're finding other ways. And then the last one is to thank those on your team more frequently. So first off, why are rewards important to an effective team? We feel that proper reward systems are really important in helping make employees feel valued and showing them that what they're doing, their contributions do matter. And we find that often blanket rewards can be very demotivating. You mentioned a little bit in our interview that a lot of your bonus structure is based on just overall company numbers, and everybody kind of gets the same based on that. And I think we've all experienced situations in our careers where we felt like we went the extra mile and then got rewarded the same as everyone else. So we want to help you to avoid that, to be able to help your employees to feel like their extra efforts matter, and reward systems are a good way to do that. And then it's also important to note that studies show that money isn't the top motivator. So often other ways of showing that our employees are making a difference are just as valuable or more valuable. And we know commitment increases when employees are appreciated. It's a lot easier for an employee to go the extra mile for the company when they feel like the company values them and will go the extra mile for them as well. Next slide, please. So how will we do this? So with the first suggestion, we want to work with you to help structure your bonuses to align with 2 things, with your team's thematic goal, which I'll talk about here in a little bit, and then also towards individual progress in some teamwork skills. And those could be some of the things that we've already talked about, like developing and working with norms, to giving and receiving feedback, to being respectful, making it known to your team that doing some of those things will be brought up in the bonus conversation, in the financial incentive conversation there. And then also with other incentives, we thought of just a few simple things, like using things like a gift card or even a candy bar can be a great way to show someone that you appreciate their extra work. Or doing a team party, or maybe giving an extra day off after accomplishing a big project is a simple way to show that you value the extra work they're doing. And then with the last one, we want to have you make the goal of thanking all members of your team at least weekly. And this may not quite sound like a reward, but studies show that 81% of employees are inspired to work harder when their boss shows appreciation. I think that's just an amazing statistic there, that people really do feel the value of thanking them. So we want you to start incorporating that right away to thank your team and let them know that you do care. And so to help you with this, we want to set up a meeting with you where we'll discuss some ideas for how you can apply and restructure some of your incentives. And one thing I want to talk about in this meeting is bring up the story of someone named Ralph Stayer. And he, just to tell you just a brief bit about his story, he had a company, and one thing he did is he changed their incentive system to not reward people just based on longevity, but on their willingness to take on more responsibility and be leaders. And that worked wonders for them. So I want to bring up that story with you and kind of give you a model for how that can work. And then we'll continue to follow up and discuss additional ways to reward as we work on these over time. Next slide, please. And then for a second, I want to introduce to you the idea of a thematic goal. So the whole idea of a thematic goal is that it's a goal that becomes the most important focus for your team. And it helps to align individual roles that may differ towards a common goal. And a thematic goal is really powerful when it's accompanied by something called a scoreboard. And off to your right there, I have just a very simple example of a thematic goal. We used the idea of an umbrella. You guys are an insurance company. Love the idea that you guys cover people. And so kind of the idea with this scoreboard is that it kind of shows you how you're doing. It allows you to track where you are towards this goal. And it includes a few key things. You have to have your thematic goal, which is something that's measurable. You need to have some objectives, which are things that you feel that you need to improve or do in order to reach that goal. And then it needs to be somewhere visible that you can see it. That can be in the office, where you guys have some virtual members. I think it would be great if you guys had this online, or you send it out by email once in a while, so that everybody on the team can see it and participate. And the goals need to be time bound. It needs to be something that you can trace over time and track how you're doing. So this is just a very simple example, but now I'm going to kick it over to Bree, who's going to show you an example of how this would work in a real organization.
Yeah, so Joe, this is a company that I've worked for, and we kind of set up just a quick thematic goal for them, and that would be to increase new first-time freshman enrollment. Obviously, this is time frames because they only count students at the beginning of the fall semester. But then they have defined objectives at the bottom with strengthening relationships, improved communication, balanced schedules, and increased campus visits. As you can see, the better they do in these defined objectives, the more the people move towards the bell tower. And the reason that this is important because it helps your team prioritize what's important to you and prioritize what's important, or prioritize the most important tasks first.
So in summary, what we want to talk about is just review the suggestions that we've come up with. So we've talked about vulnerability-based trust. We've talked about norms, feedback. We've talked about a scoreboard and rewards. And so if you can implement all of these things, it will allow your team to feel safe. You guys will be able to have healthy conflict. Team members will be being held accountable, and really your team will be able to focus on results. And so by implementing all these strategies, we feel like your team can become a lot more successful. They can increase their confidence and basically just lead to a higher performing team. And so we look forward to helping you with all these suggestions and putting them in place. And we know that if we do that, they will help you and your team immensely.